What are unhelpful thinking styles? Everyone has a constant stream of thoughts, consciousness, images or ideas going through their head. Most of us, however, go through our life without really paying much attention to what's going on in between our two ears. In fact, we might have just gotten used to hearing those voices and not really paying attention to what they're saying, even though the content of that voice or those images can be quite detrimental to our well-being. What I mean by this is that often, without even realizing, we let our headspace be dominated by unhelpful thinking styles that are actually quite detrimental to us. There are many different types of unhelpful thinking styles, and you might realize that you have more than one, just a few, or none at all of these at the one time, or that you've experienced a range of them throughout your lifetime. The bottom line is, though, that ultimately they're not good for our well-being and or our life satisfaction, and that ultimately they can become a barrier to you being able to become an elite version of yourself. Some of these unhelpful thinking styles include using a mental filter, so only focusing on information that we sort of selectively choose, which more often than not tends to be negative information. Another unhelpful thinking style might be the fact that we jump to conclusions or we pretend that we can mind read. So a situation may occur and we immediately make an assumption about what the other person was thinking or what might be happening in the world without having any real evidence to base that conclusion off. We often also personalize situations in the world that we don't actually have any control over, such as blaming ourselves for a bus that got there earlier than intended. But equally, we can tend to catastrophize events where we completely blow something out of proportion without necessarily there being reason to do that. So missing a bus or a train and blaming ourselves and pretending that the world is about to end when in fact there's probably another bus or another train coming your way. Obviously, any of these unhelpful thinking styles can be applied to the fitness context. For example, black and white thinking is something that you see all the time, especially in weight loss journeys. It might present itself as someone kind of going into their fuck it mode, where they think that just because they've had one minor slip up, they've completely ruined their journey and they can't seem to find any grey space in between the option of giving up and the option of simply being able to move past it. What I tend to use is the analogy of a burst tyre. So if you were going on a road trip and one of your tyres burst, you would simply get out of the car and accept that your journey might be delayed by a few hours. The last thing you'd probably do is get out of the car and slash the other 3 tyres because why the fuck not? One's broken anyway. Do you see how this doesn't make much sense and how this thinking pattern might be quite unhelpful to you? Shouldering and musting, or what we sometimes call in sports psychology, masturbation, is another form of unhelpful thinking styles, because what they do is they create very rigid rules around the way that you live your life. They don't allow for much flexibility at all, and it puts so much more pressure on you to feel like you can't break any of these rules. And if you do, then we're back to that black and white style of thinking where you fucked it and there's no way back. What I always remind my clients is that if you aim for perfection, you're never going to be good enough. But if you aim for good enough, you'll always be good enough because you're setting your own standards and your own markers of success. And the last 2 unhelpful thinking styles that we tend to see, especially in a fitness and weight loss journey, is overgeneralization. So that might mean making statements that are global, such as I always fuck this up, or I will never be able to overcome the hurdle that I'm experiencing right now. But we also tend to see a minimization of positives, such as someone congratulating us for our weight loss so far and us dismissing it by saying, I've still got so much more to lose. So now that I've spoken about the different unhelpful thinking styles, I'd like you to consider different situations in which you might have seen these used by yourself or by somebody else. You can start to think about the thoughts that emerge into your mind as a result of that unhelpful thinking style and start to consider how it made you feel and as a result how it made you behave in that moment. When we're using unhelpful thinking styles, more often than not, they act as barriers to us being able to succeed. And in fact, there are many ways of seeing a same situation. It's just about looking at it from a different lens. Some of the things you might consider are, what is the evidence to support this style of thinking? Such as, have I definitely fucked it if I've missed 1 rep, 1 week in 1 exercise? Have I definitely completely stalled my ability to gain muscle? Or did that person really think that I look A, B, C, and D just from the way that they looked at me? Could it be possible that maybe they're having a bad day and that their facial expressions are completely unrelated to me? So consider if there's different ways of looking at the situation. Another thing you might do is think about what you might say to someone that you love if they were to express these types of unhelpful thinking strategies. What would you say to them? How would you comfort them? And are you able to say that to yourself? And finally, if you wanted to respond differently to this current scenario, what would you have to do differently? How would your thinking style have to change in order for you to feel a different way and in order for you to act a different way in that situation too? If you're still unsure about this, or if you feel like you need a little bit more help identifying your unhelpful thinking styles and changing them so that they actually become helpful and beneficial to you, get in touch today, because that's something I can help you with, and that's something I would love to help you with, because ultimately what I want is for you to become an elite version of yourself, and there's only one way to do that. Sign up today.